At Christmas, Mom said, "Your brother's debt is our problem now, and by our, I mean yours." My dad just smiled. "You've got the money." I took one calm sip and said, "You're right. And I'm using it to fund a move, far away." My brother's face went pale. My mom's jaw dropped. I think I always knew I was just the spare part in the family. Not the golden child, not the rebel. Just there. Background noise. Mark got to be the disaster and still came out sparkling. Broken rules, missed deadlines, tantrums, all met with understanding. My mom once told me, "Boys just need more time to grow up." I was 12 when she said that. Mark was 18 and had just crashed her car into a light pole. He never paid a cent to fix it, but I washed it every weekend for a year. By the time I hit 20, I had already accepted how the house worked. I lived quietly in the corner of their world. I worked online. Logo design, branding, social media visuals, things they didn't understand and didn't care to. But the money was good. Better than they assumed. They thought I did cute little side gigs while living rent-free in their house. What they didn't know was that I had more in savings than both of them combined. Kept the peace by playing along. I cooked most nights. I paid the electric bill once without telling anyone when I saw the notice in the mailbox. I never brought people over. And I kept my bank statements to myself. I remember the day everything snapped like it happened 10 minutes ago. It was Christmas morning. I'd been up late the night before finalizing a client project, but of course no one asked. I came downstairs to the usual. Mom criticizing how I wrapped gifts, Dad in his recliner mumbling about the coffee being weak, Mark and his wife Katie already sitting on the couch like they lived there. She was pregnant, glowing and smug. He looked like he hadn't worked in 6 months because he hadn't. The cinnamon rolls were cold, the tree was crooked, and the only gift I got was a scarf from a department store I knew had gone out of business last year. And then, in the middle of this charming morning, Mom said it. "So, your brother's been having a rough time financially. You know how hard it's been, especially with the baby coming." She was calm, almost rehearsed. "We've talked about it. And we've decided that his debt is our problem now. And by our, I mean yours." I laughed because I genuinely thought it was a joke. Mark was staring at his phone. Katie didn't even flinch. She was nodding like it was some logical conclusion. Like this was a natural progression of my life. Grow up, be ignored, and eventually become my brother's financial backup plan. My dad finally spoke up. He didn't even look at me when he said it. "You've got the money. You've been saving all that time, right?" It was surreal. They said it like they were complimenting me, like I should be proud they noticed. I picked up my coffee. It was barely warm, but I sipped it slowly because I wanted to drag out the silence. "You're right. I do have the money. And I'm using it to fund a move, far away." I could actually feel the pause in the room, like the whole air had shifted. Mark looked up. Katie blinked like someone had slapped her. My mom's mouth opened slightly but no sound came out. My dad raised his eyebrows. He thought I was bluffing. But I wasn't. Because while they were busy praising Mark for keeping a cactus alive for 3 weeks, I was building a life they couldn't imagine. And now I was done pretending I owed them something for being ignored. The rest of Christmas Day moved in slow motion after I said it. No yelling. No dramatic arguments. Just a long, awkward stretch of silence where everyone pretended I hadn't just changed the temperature in the room. My mom started clearing plates like we were done with dinner, even though lunch hadn't even hit the table. My dad leaned back in his recliner and turned up the game, trying to drown it all out. Mark said nothing, but I caught him staring at me like he was trying to solve a math problem he didn't understand. Katie, of course, made it about her stomach. She said she was feeling sick and disappeared upstairs for the rest of the afternoon. I didn't repeat myself. I didn't have to. That night, I went back to my room, sat down at my desk, and opened the folder I'd named Someday. Inside were years of planning. Bookmarked apartments, cost of living spreadsheets, a list of cities where my money could stretch without me having to hear someone else's laundry cycle through my wall. I wasn't playing around. I had real numbers, real options, and now a real reason. By the end of that week, I'd picked the city. I chose a place 6 hours away. Not too far, but far enough. It had everything I wanted. Decent rent, clean neighborhoods, quiet coffee shops, and, most importantly, not a single person who expected me to foot someone else's bill. I didn't tell them. Not yet. Watching them squirm in uncertainty was a strange, guilty kind of satisfying. Every day that passed, my silence made them more nervous. Mom was the first to react. Her entire attitude changed. Suddenly, she was pouring my coffee in the morning, asking how my clients were, telling me about her favorite memories of me as a kid, ones I didn't even remember happening. She started leaving little things on my bed. A candle, she said, reminded her of me. A pack of pens because she knew I liked arts and things. Then came the forced nostalgia. She brought out old photo albums, played family videos after dinner, even brought up how tight we used to be when I was little. I wanted to ask her when that ever happened. Dad went the cold route. Passive comments. Tension in his shoulders. He made sure to talk loudly when paying bills at the table, as if to remind me what real responsibility looked like. He even said at one point loud enough for me to hear, "Some people just forget what family means when money's involved." Mark didn't talk to me at all. He barely looked at me. I think he realized that if I really left, there wasn't anyone else around who could be convinced to save him. He kept pretending nothing had changed, but I saw him glance over when I came home with cardboard boxes in my backseat. Then Katie made her move. She waited until Mom wasn't around and followed me into the kitchen one morning. She leaned against the counter and said real soft, "So, we were wondering, would there be room for us? Just for a while. Until the baby's born and Mark's work gets stable." I was halfway through pouring my coffee. I didn't look at her. I asked, "Us?" She said, "Well, the baby needs space. And it's just hard with so many people in one house. You get it?" I nodded. Told her I'd think about it. I never did. I wasn't even taking furniture from this house, let alone the people in it. The next day Mom asked me to sit with her after dinner. She started crying halfway through her speech about family unity, how seasons of life were meant to be shared. How she couldn't bear the thought of us not being together when the baby came. I just listened. I nodded at the right times. She ended with, "We don't want to lose you. But if you have to go, can't you at least help them first? Just until they get back on their feet." I told her I'd think about it too. Then I went upstairs and printed my moving checklist. Every item I packed felt like a step out of their orbit. Out of the space they kept me in for years. I labeled boxes carefully. Kept them in my room. Locked the door when I left. I'd already booked the movers. I was leaving in 2 weeks. And none of them had any idea how far gone I already was. 2 weeks. That's what I had between signing the lease and leaving for good. I didn't announce it like a countdown. I didn't circle the date on the calendar. I just moved quietly the same way I'd lived there for years. First I kept everything hidden. Boxes under the bed. Clothes packed into suitcases that stayed zipped. Important documents tucked inside my work backpack. I didn't want to deal with the questions yet. I wanted control over at least one part of this. But you can only hide momentum for so long. Mark noticed first. He always did when something involved him indirectly. One night I came home with a large rolling suitcase in my trunk. He was standing in the driveway pretending to take a call. When I lifted it out, he watched without saying a word. Later, as I was heading upstairs, he asked if I was really serious about leaving. I said yes. He paused, then asked what I'd do when things didn't work out. Not if, when. I told him I'd figure it out. That annoyed him more than if I'd argued. He muttered something about people getting ideas above their station. I didn't respond. I closed my door and locked it. After that, the house shifted again. Mom went cold in a way I hadn't seen before. Not loud, not dramatic. Just withdrawn. She stopped knocking before entering my room like she was reclaiming territory. She stopped making enough food for everyone and said she assumed I'd eaten already. Once I overheard her telling a friend on the phone that I was being distant lately, and she didn't know why. Dad turned passive-aggressive into an art form. He left old photos on the kitchen table. Made comments about how fast time goes when kids abandon their parents. Once he said at dinner that some people confuse independence with selfishness. No one looked at me, but everyone knew who he meant. Mark and Katie escalated. Katie stopped being subtle. She cornered me in the hallway and asked again if there was room for them. This time she added that doctors recommend a calm environment for pregnancy. She said stress wasn't good for the baby. She said she was worried. I asked her how moving into my place would reduce stress if Mark still didn't have a job. She said they'd figure it out. Mark followed up that night. He told me I was tearing the family apart. Said Mom hadn't been sleeping. Said Dad was worried about bills. Said this wasn't the time to make everything about myself. I didn't remind him that his debt was the reason this started. I didn't remind him how many times I'd covered groceries or utilities or random emergencies without being asked. I just said I was moving. That weekend I stopped hiding. I brought the boxes out of my room and stacked them in the hallway. I broke down my bed frame and leaned it against the wall. I labeled everything clearly. Bedroom, office, kitchen, It was like watching them realize the plane was already in the air. On Sunday morning I told them the exact date. Friday. Movers at 8. Gone by noon. Mom asked if that was really happening. I said yes. She nodded slowly like she was accepting a diagnosis. After that, the house felt hostile in small ways. Someone unplugged my laptop charger. My laundry went missing once. The thermostat kept getting adjusted after I left the room. No one said anything directly, but it was clear they wanted me uncomfortable. 3 days before the move, Mom came into my room without knocking. She sat on the edge of my mattress and said she'd been thinking. She said maybe this was all happening too fast. Maybe I didn't realize how much the family needed me. Then she said something that finally made everything click. If you're going to take anyone, at least take the baby. He shouldn't grow up here. I stared at her. He meant it. They all did. They weren't sad I was leaving. They were scared of losing what I provided. The money, the labor, the buffer. And now they wanted to hand me responsibility for a child too. I didn't argue. I didn't say no. I told her I'd think about it. She left the room looking relieved. That night I finished packing the last box. I sat on the floor surrounded by everything I owned and realized something quietly devastating. They didn't love me. They relied on me. And those two things are not the same. By the time Friday came, I didn't feel anything like what I thought I would. No panic, no guilt. Just this strange sense of clarity. Like something heavy I'd been carrying for years had finally shifted just enough for me to breathe. I didn't even sleep the night before. I stayed up going over the checklist, reviewing the new lease, double-checking that I had everything. And then I just sat there, watching the clock, listening to the house creak like it always had. Nothing had changed, except everything had. At 8 on the dot, the moving truck pulled into the driveway. The noise must have woken them. First, Mom came down. She was still in her robe, hair messy, holding her phone like she'd been scrolling in bed and didn't expect anything real to happen this morning. She didn't say a word. She just stood in the hallway and watched two movers start carrying boxes out the front door, past the ugly little angel statue she refused to get rid of. Then she turned and walked into the kitchen without a word. Kept my head down. Just kept moving. Mark came downstairs around 8:30. No hello, no questions, just that same dumbfounded expression like I'd stolen something from him. Like he expected me to change my mind at the last second and laugh it off. Like this was a bluff and I was about to fold. Instead, I pointed to the pile of boxes still in the living room and asked the movers if they needed help with the heavier ones. Mark just stood there. He said, "You're actually serious?" I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Then Katie appeared, not walking but filming, phone in hand, already recording. She moved around like she was capturing footage for some kind of true crime special. She narrated in a low voice, probably hoping her mom or one of her friends was watching live. "She's really leaving," she said like I wasn't even there. "She's taking all her stuff. All her money. Just leaving the rest of us behind." He turned the camera on me. I didn't flinch. I let her record every box going out the door. If they needed proof, let them keep it. Let them frame it. Let them make it look however they wanted. I wasn't going to stop them. At 10 we hit the furniture. That's when Dad finally came downstairs. He didn't look at me at first. He glanced at the now half-empty living room, then looked around like he wasn't quite sure what day it was. Like he was surprised no one had stopped it yet. Then he said something I didn't expect. "You know we tried, right?" I turned toward him. He wasn't looking at me when he said it. "We didn't always get it right, but we tried. That has to count for something." I didn't argue. I didn't remind him that trying never included listening. That trying never meant making me feel like anything other than the utility character in Mark's sitcom. I just nodded. That was all I gave him. At 11:30 the last box was in the truck. I signed the paperwork and thanked the movers. It was done. Nothing left inside except the bed frame I had no interest in keeping and the echoes of a version of me that never really existed here. But then Mom stepped out of the house holding something in her hand, an envelope. She didn't say anything, just held it out. Inside was a card. A generic, glittery, floral Hallmark card that said, "Congratulations on your new chapter." Nothing written inside, except for a photo taped loosely to the fold. A picture of me on my 10th birthday holding a cake with crooked candles. Behind me, barely in frame, was Mark pretending to blow them out over my shoulder. Mom looked at me and said, "You'll remember this when you miss us." Then she turned around and walked back inside. I didn't reply. I got into my car and as I pulled out of the driveway I noticed something else. Katie was still on the porch filming me again. Like this was some kind of betrayal she needed documentation for. I almost laughed. Mark was nowhere to be seen. But here's what they didn't know. I wasn't going straight to my new place. There was one stop first. Across town in a quiet neighborhood, at a tiny apartment I'd already paid for 6 months in advance. And I wasn't showing up alone. Because someone else had reached out. Quietly. A week ago. While everyone else was too busy with guilt and manipulation and whispered threats, someone had knocked on my door and simply asked. It was my cousin Jenna. She'd stayed with us one summer when her mom went through a rough patch years ago. We were close back then. We used to sneak Pop-Tarts at midnight and talk about leaving this place behind. I hadn't seen her in years. But out of nowhere she messaged me. She said she heard I was moving. She said she needed a fresh start too. She didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for space. Just a chance to get out before she got stuck somewhere she didn't belong. So I rented a second apartment. Smaller. Quieter. Furnished just enough to start over. And I told her it was hers. Just like that. Because when someone asks without entitlement, without assuming you owe them something, when someone says, I'll figure it out. I just need a beginning, sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's the person you take with you. The night I moved in, I didn't even sleep in my bed. I sat on the floor for hours eating leftover takeout straight from the container and listening to nothing. And I mean nothing. No voices through the wall, no dishwasher running for the third time because no one knew how to load it, no arguing about who forgot to buy toilet paper. Just me and the sound of a fridge humming in a space that finally, for the first time in my life, felt untouched by anyone else's expectations. I hadn't realized how much noise I'd been living in until it was gone. I didn't unpack everything right away. Just the essentials. The rest I left in boxes for a while. Not because I was unsure but because I wanted to ease into my own life. Piece by piece. The next morning, Jenna showed up with her backpack and one overstuffed suitcase. I'd already left the spare apartment key at the front desk for her. She walked in, looked around and just whispered, "This doesn't feel real." I handed her a coffee and said, "It is now." She didn't cry. Neither did I. We just started over. That same day the text from Mom came in. "Just checking if you made it. Let us know you're safe. Then, don't forget about Mark's birthday next week. We were hoping you'd come by. Then, are you even thinking about the family at all?" I didn't reply. Then came Katie's messages. And she wasn't trying to be nice. "This whole thing feels so personal, Lisa. We just needed help. For a little while. And you abandoned us. It's not like you earned this life alone. We were all part of it." I read them once and archived them. Later that week, Dad texted a blurry photo of the water heater followed by, "Looks like it's broken. Must be nice having money set aside for this kind of thing." That was his way of saying he now had to deal with something I usually fixed. He never asked how I was. That weekend, Jenna and I went shopping for furniture. We weren't going for anything fancy, just enough to make the place feel lived in. We picked out a couch that didn't sag, plates that matched, real curtains. She showed me how to hang pictures without putting holes in the wall. I helped her set up her workspace in the spare bedroom. She started getting freelance writing gigs almost immediately. It didn't take long to fall into a rhythm. Meanwhile, the updates from my old house slowed. Until they didn't. My aunt, Katie's mom, forwarded me an email Katie had sent to the rest of the family. A multi-paragraph epic explaining how I'd cut everyone off, refused to help during a family crisis, and was now living in some modern condo pretending she did it all on her own. She attached the screenshots from the day I moved out. Boxes. Movers. The photo of me signing the paperwork with the truck in the background. Katie had filmed the whole thing like it was a documentary about abandonment. But here's what shocked me. The responses. Not everyone saw it her way. A few cousins I hadn't spoken to in years reached out privately. One wrote, "I can't believe you actually left. I think about it all the time but I never do it." Another messaged me on Instagram just to say, "I'm proud of you. No one says that enough." And then came the surprise. An old family friend, someone who used to babysit me and Mark, messaged and asked if I was hiring for design help. She said she saw my name in a professional Facebook group and couldn't believe I was doing so well. She hadn't even heard about the drama. She just remembered me as the quiet one who always stayed behind. That phrase stuck with me, the one who always stayed behind. I wasn't behind anymore. But my family, they were still back there acting like I'd stolen something from them by finally stepping forward. A week passed. Then everything went silent. No texts. No calls. No guilt trips. They weren't reaching out anymore, but not in a peaceful way. It was that stiff, frozen kind of silence. The kind that's meant to punish. The kind that says, "You're not welcome back." And that's when I finally understood something that should have hurt more than it did. They weren't mad because I left. They were mad because I didn't fall apart without them. They expected me to fail. Quietly. To come crawling back. To ask for help. To prove they were still needed. That they still mattered. But I didn't. I was making it. And not just surviving. I was living in a clean, quiet space. Paying my own bills. Running my own life. Having dinners with Jenna where no one raised their voice. Laughing for no reason. Sleeping in peace. Starting over, not from scratch but from strength. That's when I decided it was time. Time to show them exactly what they lost. I almost didn't invite them. I'd gone back and forth for days. Wrote and deleted the message at least a dozen times. Jenna said it was my choice, but I could tell she hoped I wouldn't. Not because she was worried they'd make a scene, but because she didn't think they deserved to be part of this. And maybe they didn't. But I wanted them to see it. Not just the apartment, not just the new couch or the plants by the window. I wanted them to see me, not the version they boxed in but the one they couldn't imagine. The version that existed outside their control. Independent. Comfortable. Unapologetic. So I sent the invite. Nothing dramatic. Just a group text that said, housewarming. Saturday at 5. Bring whoever. Or don't. I didn't expect a response. But Mom texted back first. We'll be there. Followed by a separate message. Is Mark invited too? I didn't answer. That was answer enough. Saturday came. Jenna helped me set everything up. Snacks on the counter, little labels on the serving dishes, wine glasses lined up on the kitchen island. The music was low. Candles lit. The place smelled like cinnamon and pine. I wanted it to feel like warmth. Like the opposite of where I'd come from. People started arriving. A few friends from college. A client I'd done work for who brought her husband and a bottle of expensive wine. Jenna's new friend from her writing group. It wasn't a packed house, but it was full, and it was the first time I looked around a room and felt like every person there was there for me, not because they had to be, but because they wanted to be. Then just after 6 they arrived. All of them. Mom, Dad, Mark, and Katie. Is Katie still very pregnant? Still visibly annoyed even before stepping inside. Mark looked around like he was checking out a hotel he couldn't afford. Dad stayed quiet. Mom smiled too much. I greeted them politely. Offered drinks. They declined. They stood by the entrance for a while, not really talking to anyone. I didn't go out of my way to include them, and I didn't ignore them either. I just let them exist in the same space as the life they weren't part of anymore. Eventually Mom pulled me aside. She looked around and said, "It's nice. You did a lot with it. Must have cost you." I nodded. Then she said, "We're proud. Even if it doesn't seem like it." I smiled at that. Not because it meant anything, but because it sounded so rehearsed. Like something she thought she should say. Then came the real reason they came. Mark walked over and said, "We've been looking at places. Nothing's working out." Katie added, "Everything's so expensive. And this baby's coming any day now." Mom jumped in with, "But this is good, Lisa. Look what you've built. Maybe it's time to think about the next step. A bigger place maybe." That was the pitch. Bigger place. More space. For them. They weren't here to celebrate. They were here to measure the walls. I laughed. Actually laughed. I think it surprised everyone. Then I said, "I'm not expanding anything. I'm enjoying what's mine. You should try it." No one responded. The rest of the night they lingered awkwardly. They didn't speak to anyone else. Didn't compliment anything. Barely touched the food. But they stayed. They stayed long enough to see people hug me when they left. To hear people say things like, "You really deserve this," and "This place feels like you." They stayed long enough to realize that I had a life. A good one without them. When they finally left, Mom hugged me stiffly and said, "We'll see you soon." I didn't say anything back. They walked out. No tears. No final scene. Just the sound of the door closing behind them. And that was it. They didn't cry because I left. And they didn't cry tonight either. Because they never lost someone they loved. They lost someone they used. And deep down I think they knew it. And finally so did I.